Hey everyone, it's Rick here, talking some football talk again. This is what I believe is the NFL's best defenses ever, team defenses. Now, I'm going to stick with the NFL from the merger of 1970 through 1992, which is just before free agency and the salary cap, which I think has done a lot of damage to the league. It has especially done a lot of damage to NFL defenses. There were some that came after that were very good, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens and the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. But by and large, defenses like today and since that era, especially today, are just nothing like they used to be because there's so many players that leave and come and go, and the salary cap makes it so you can't really form a very, very shut down defense like before, and the rules have changed as well. So I'm going to keep it. No offense to anybody who's into today's football more. I'm not. I'm going to keep it from 1970 and 1992, which I think was the height of the great defenses and the great teams that we know and love in modern NFL history. I know some teams in the 60s, which is start before the merger, were great. The Packers defenses, the Colts. But I'm going to keep it 1970 through 1992. Now, we talk about great defense teams. I got a top 10 defenses. Before that, I'm going to talk about great eras, who I think had the best era, meaning a clump of years. Okay? So I'm going to give honorable mention to the Buffalo Bills, 90 to like 93. So that was a little past 92, but they went to 4 straight Super Bowls. I don't think they had the best defenses ever, but they were definitely very solid, very effective. You're talking about having Bruce Smith, Cornelius Bennett, and the Bills went to 4 Super Bowls. Now, it wasn't just because their defense, their offense was very dynamic then with Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly and Andre Reed and stuff. They didn't win any, but they were still went to 4 in a row, and the defense had a lot to do with it. They made big plays, and Bruce Smith was one of the best defensive tackles ever. So I'm going to give it an honorable mention, but definitely not the best, but definitely needs to be mentioned there. I'm going to talk about some other honorable mentions. The Vikings. The Vikings defense throughout the 70s actually started in 69, just before, and went all the way like to 77, where they were like one of the top defenses every year. They went to 4 Super Bowls during that time, 69, 73, 74, and 76. They didn't win any. They really played very poorly in them. But their defense was a very big, during the year, was always very good. They were always a top quality defense, even as they aged. Kyle Eller, Alan Page, Gary Larson. They were very, very good. They deserve honorable mention. I don't think they were the best, but they were very good and very consistent for a long time. The Washington Redskins, the over-the-hill gang, 71 to 77, George Allen's crew. Always older, but they were very good. They were very good. They weren't, I don't think, the best, but they were honorable mention. They were always a tough defense. They always know how to get turnovers. They always were a key catalyst, and the Redskins always going like 10-4 and always having a very decent season. Then honorable mention also the Dallas Cowboys, 70 to 79. The entire decade of the 70s, actually starting in 65 to 69, they were very good too. But I'm going to say 70 to 79. Dallas went to 5 Super Bowls in 10 years. They won a couple of them. The Steelers, of course, stopped them from winning more. But they were always very top in the defenses. They always had a very crushing defense called the Doomsday Defense, always rushed the passer very, very well, and was one of the catalysts why Dallas won more games than anybody in the 70s, more overall football games. That was one of the reasons. They did have a good quarterback. They could run the ball, but their defense, honorable mention. Okay? Still not the best, but honorable mention. The Rams, 73 to 79, when Chuck Knox took them over in 73. Well, it was 79. They won a division for 7 straight years. When the 49ers dipped out in 72, John Brody retired. But the only reason why I'm not going to put them as they're very good. If you look at, they're always consistent, winning 11, 12 games every year. The only reason why I'm not going to put them as high as I probably should, because they always allowed field, very little points. And the reason why I'm not going to add them as one of the best is because they had a very soft division. Whereas the Cowboys always had a battle of Cardinals and the Redskins, and then later on the Eagles. And, Steelers had to have the Bengals, who were always good in the division, and the Oilers. Like, the Rams had nothing. They had years where they would win 12, and the closest was like 5 and 9. They had a terrible division, which helped them pad their defensive stats. Now, I'm not saying the Rams were a good team. And if you're Rams fans out there, hey, they were excellent. But their soft division they're very good. I don't put them as one of the top. This is my opinion. The Bears, 85 to 88. We know about the 85 Bears defense. I'm going to talk a little about them. But that 3-4 year span, the Bears defense was one of the best. There's no doubt about it. Okay. But the Dolphins, 71 to 74. The perfect season. They won a couple Super Bowls during there. The no-name defense. It wasn't powerful in the sense that it sacked you a lot. But it stopped the run, created lots of turnovers, and it was efficient. And they won a lot of games in 71 to 74. But the best one for era defense, I'm going to say, and I'm a Cowboys fan, but I'm going to say, they have to say, 72 to 79 Pittsburgh Steelers. 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, and one of the main reasons was that defense. Now, they did have a good running game, but they were never the most prolific offense. In the late 70s, they threw the ball better with Terry and stuff. You get into the passing more. But for the most part, for most of that time period, that was a running team that fed off one of the most powerful defenses ever. Steve Furness, Mean Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood. I mean, this was like Ernie Holmes. This was like a front four that was powerful and would take games over. I'll get into that more. So I say the best era of defenses, for one stretch, was Steelers from like 72 to 79, when they were really good in the 70s. Produced 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons, which is still a record, winning 4 and 6. That's twice, 2 in a row. Fantastic stuff. So now we go to individual top 10 defenses. I'm going to tell you, not everybody won the Super Bowl, and even one team didn't even get in the playoffs. But this is my pick, and I'll tell you why. Number 10, 75 Steelers. So the Steelers. I think 1975 was the overall best team of the Steelers. They were 12-2 when they played 14 games. Some people say the 78 Steelers. I disagree. I think the stats were much better in the 75 Steelers. They didn't pass the ball as much. They were at their peak at running, and they had a defense that allowed the second fewest points in the league, only behind the Rams. But the Steelers had 12-2. The Bengals were 11-3, and the Oilers were 10-4. The Rams that year were 12-2, and the closest after them were 5-9. So, again, Steelers had much more difficult competition. They had the best point differential, 211, that in a 14-game schedule for that year and for the Steelers team ever. And that defense was a very major part of it. That was their second Super Bowl they won, a repeat over Dallas. I believe the 75 Steelers, although I don't think it's their best defense, I'll get to that later, was in the top 10. I'm going to put them as number 10. Number 9, 72 Dolphins. Why aren't they higher? Well, because I don't think the Dolphins' defenses were the best compared to other teams, because the Dolphin defenses but I thought they were excellent. They were very sound. What the Dolphin defenses were able to gain from was that they had an extremely ball-efficient offense, one of the best rushing teams ever. 72 to 73, 74 Dolphins. That team could run the ball, Zonka, kick, Morris, right down your throat. They controlled the ball, which really helped their defense. They were the best ball control ever. I mean, the 73 second Super Bowl, they threw the ball 7 times and just ran it down the Vikings' throats. So that helped their defense. Nevertheless, you go undefeated. They even didn't have their quarterback. After week 4, Earl Morrall had to play because Greasy got hurt for the rest of the season until the playoffs. Now, Earl Morrall wasn't a bum. The guy had gone to the Super Bowl with the Colts in 68 and was a proven winner. So it wasn't a big loss, but nevertheless, they did that. They struggled a little in the playoffs. They barely beat the Browns, Steelers, and they struggled against Washington. But they won them all. That's the bottom line. That was a 17-0 team. I said the 72 Dolphins defense needs to be in there because they were undefeated. If nothing else, they're undefeated. They need to be in the top 10. Number 8, the 73 Dolphins went 12-2 the next year. Why are they higher? Well, for one, Don Shula admits the 73 team was actually better than the 72 team. He said it himself. They rolled through the playoffs, blowing out the Bengals, the Raiders, and the Vikings. There was no trouble. And their defense actually allowed fewer points, by 21 fewer points than they did the year before, and had better turnover ratios. I actually think, despite the fact that they were undefeated the year before, and they were only 12-2, that the 73 defense actually statistically was actually stronger than the 72 defense. Not by much, but enough to put them number 8. Number 7, 92 Cowboys, which I think was one of the best teams I've ever seen before. It was the best team, that was put together for real before free agency. Yes, I'm a Cowboys fan, but the 92 team was considered, it was probably probably the most talented team ever, away from the 77 team that won. The 92 team was distinct in that it was the youngest team to ever win, and it had a rotating 22 men in the defenses rotating. It was number one ranked that year. It was not expected to be that good, and it was swarming and fast. It was probably the quickest defense I've ever seen in my life. It was young, youthful, deep, and fast. And it demoralized Buffalo. 9 turnovers. They just took Buffalo apart in the Super Bowl. Took everybody apart in the playoffs. San Francisco, Eagles that year they played. And a lot had to do, yes, they had Emmitt Smith. They had a great running game as well. And they could move the football. But their defense, 9 turnovers, scored a couple touchdowns in that Super Bowl. They were quick. They were deep. They never get tired because of that 22-man rotation. And they were the fastest defense I've ever seen in my life. You just don't get defenses like that because of free agency. I'm not saying they were the best, but number 7, I'll put them in there. It was a great Cowboys Super Bowl winning team. Now, number 6, above them, the 91 Eagles. Guess what? 91 Eagles went 10-6 and missed the playoffs. Why am I putting them in there? If you're a football fan, you understood the 91 Eagles. Joe Theismann calls it one of the best defenses he's ever seen. The 91 Eagles allowed the fewest total yards in a 16-game season to date. A little over 3,000 total yards for a season, 3,100 or something like that. The 91 Eagles had no offense. Randall Cunningham went out in the first game, and they had Brad Gable, some other quarterback, Jim McMahon, who was burnt out. They couldn't move the ball. They scored a meager 285 points in 16 games. They had no offense at all. The only reason why they won 10 games was because of their defense. They had Jerome Brown, who tragically passed in the summer for a car accident after that year. They had Reggie White, Clyde Simmons. It was a power defense. They played the Cowboys the year before the Cowboys won the Super Bowl, one game, and it sacked Aikman 11 times. It never happened to Aikman. 11 times in Dallas. They were an amazing defense. 10-6 and missed the playoffs because they had no offense. Any type of offense at all, that team would have been a Super Bowl contender without a shot. The 91 Eagles defense, statistically, is as good as it gets. You don't believe me? Check it out. Yes, just don't think, they didn't make the playoffs. It mustn't have been that good. When you have no offense at all and no quarterback, you're not going to do the fact they won 10 games with their offense production that they didn't have was amazing. 91 Eagles defense. Joe Theismann said it. One of the best he's ever seen. I concur. Number 5, 86 Bears. Not the 85 Bears, the 86 Bears. The 86 Bears actually allowed fewer points by 8 than the 85 Bears. 187, which back then was the fewest in a 16-game schedule, which beat their team the year before, a lot of 195. Why I don't put them higher was because the year before the team was very good at scoring points in the defense. They didn't do that as much in 86. They were still very good at stopping people, but they didn't score as many defensive scores and really take over games like the 85 defense did. Nevertheless, you only allowed 187 points in 16 games, which is by far the fewest, which was a record at that time. 86 Bears defense coming off the 85, definitely number 5. Number 4, 77 Cowboys. If you ever seen that back, 77 Cowboys were considered Tom Landry's best team. They had number 1 defense that year with one of the most ferocious pass rushers I've ever seen. Harvey Martin, who had 23.5 sacks in a 14-game schedule. Put him in today's league, he had 35 sacks. It was amazing. They never threw the ball much back then. He had 23.5 sacks. You had Randy White, young, Too Tall Jones. You had Hollywood Henderson. These guys were like ferocious in quarterbacks. They went in Broncos and caused 8 turnovers in Super Bowl, destroying, holding them to like 120 total yards. The Cowboys defense was ranked number 1 in 77. It was a 12-2 football team and a very powerful pass rush. That best one the Cowboys ever had. It was one of the best of the 70s, that one team. Number 3, 86 Giants. Just a shade under the 85 Bears. Now, the 86 Giants was fantastic. The best outside linebacker in the league, and Lawrence Taylor, Carl Banks, Leonard Marshall. You couldn't get much better than that. And they didn't have a great offense. The Giants' offense was not ranked that high that year. They were like a little over middle. But their defense was fantastic. They didn't allow as few points as the Bears did, but they just didn't have that great of an offense. They had an okay offense, but they had the Big Blue Wrecking Crew, which wrecked in the playoffs. They beat a great 49ers team, 49-3 in the first game. They shut out the Redskins 17-0, a tough team, in the championship, and then they took apart the Broncos 39-20 something. They were the Giants defense, one of the best ever in '86. I don't think it's the best, but it's right up there. Okay, Cadillac. Number 2, 85 Bears. A lot of people put them as number 1. I don't, and I'll tell you why in a minute. 85 Bears, got to be number 2. Defense allowed only 195 points, shut out the Giants and Rams, and almost shut out the Patriots. They 46-10. The only reason why they didn't, Patriots scored right off the bat because Peyton fumbled at 19-yard line, Walter Payton. Patriots get 3 interceptions, but did nothing with the ball, but then got a field goal. Then when it was 44-3 late in the game, the Patriots got a junk touchdown. If that game was a shutout, Chicago might have tried to actually work harder to shut them out. 10 points in 3 games they allowed in the playoffs. But during the year, they were the highest scoring team in the league that year, and it wasn't because of their offense. It was because that team's defense would score a shit ton of points during the year, just with the defense. They would win games with their defense alone. How good the defense was. The 85 Bears defense is definitely deserves to be considered probably the best one. I'm not going to put it there because 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers, who didn't even go to the Super Bowl. Why? Well, first of all, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, and many Steelers will admit that's the best defense they ever had. Because what they did, we'll never, ever, ever see again. That team started out, they won 2 in a row in 74 and 75. And they had a hangover in 1976. They started out bad, 1-4, losing a lot of tight, close games. One to the Raiders, and then they lost one 18-16 in Week 5 against the Browns when Joe Turkey Jones, even back then by those standards, should have been thrown out of the league. He pile drive Terry Bradshaw at the ground well after the whistle, knocking Bradshaw off for the rest of the season. Now, Bradshaw did come back for the playoffs. But he was knocked out, and all they had, unlike the Dolphins who lost Greasy and had Morrow, all they had was this Mike Krusek bum that came from an Ivy League college. He never wound up doing anything. He stayed like 4 years in the league. He was a nothing. It's all they had. Terry Hanratty was gone. John Gilliam was gone. All they had was Mike Krusek, a rookie. They had no passing game. All they had was the rushing game, which was very good, one-dimensional. In the Steelers' defense, they won 9 games in a row to finish 10-4 and win that division and beat out Cincinnati, who was also 10-4. Steelers swept in the second half of the season. That defense allowed 28 points in 9 games. I'm going to repeat what I just said. 28 points in 9 games, 1 touchdown, and 7 field goals. And 16 of those came one game against the Oilers. They beat them 32-16. That means they allowed 12 points in the other 8 games. They had 5 shutouts in the last 9 games. Okay, they had to play the Bengals twice, who were ahead of them, and catch up and beat them. It wasn't like they had an easy schedule. Okay, 28 points in 9 games. That's 3 points a game. Nowadays, you can get 28 points in the first quarter. 28 in 9 games, 5 shutouts, 1 touchdown in 9 games. That's superhuman. Then they they went to the Colts, they blew the Colts out in the playoffs, and then they wound up losing the Raiders, who won the Super Bowl that year. And that's fine. They also had their both running backs out. It wasn't a great game, but they burnt out, granted. They didn't win it all. But to go 1-4, to win 9 in a row and allow 28 points and win them all with a rookie nothing quarterback that didn't do anything. 28 points in 9. Let that sink into your grate for a minute. How incredible that is. That's why I give them the best defense ever. Other people have said the same. Other people say the 85 Bears. It's a matter of opinion. These are all my opinion. So I know this talk is a little long. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you really enjoyed talking about football here, the best defenses ever. I say the best era of defense is the 72-79 Pittsburgh Steelers, and the best defense ever is 1976 Steelers. I lived through it. I saw it. It was incredible. 5 shutouts in 9 games. You'll never see that ever again. All right, it's Rick here. Hope you enjoyed the talk. Please join in. Tell me what you think. There's no right or wrong answers here. We're just all having fun, all opinions. God bless. Have a great day.